How's everybody doing?
Good. How y'all doing?
Excellent.
Good.
Everyone.
Shelma, what's up? Are you in a van right now?
I'm in a trailer.
A trailer?
Yeah, out in Shelfun. I haven't been able to go home.
Oh man. I want to hear a little bit more about that. Andrew, you're in your van as well, right?
In the rig, yep.
All right. Nice. Cody, how you doing?
Doing great. I'm in a home, not a van.
You're in a home.
I'm in a home. So I feel lucky.
Yeah, we all should. Emily will be back shortly. She just took a bathroom break after a 3.5-hour sprint here. But really, I'm psyched to have you all be a part of this. You have all been a part of the Stokecast in the past, and thank you for dedicating some time on a Saturday to jump back on here. And Cody, I believe you were like our, I don't know, third interview ever or something, like way back in the early days of the show, prior to even you kicking off the project that I'm sure we'll dig into here that you're in the middle of and probably paused on. But I guess to start with just like, let's go around here and have everybody give a brief, this is who I am and this is where I am currently.
Yeah, about that. It was a slow one. We need nominations for this. So my name's Cody Townsend, professional skier. I live in Lake Tahoe, California, in Tahoe City, and that's where I am currently, where I've been for about a month now, which is the single longest time I've spent consecutively at home in more than 2 years. So yeah, feels different.
Nice, Shelma.
Scott?
I'm like, how do we nominate this?
Hey everybody, my name is Shelma Jun, and I am the founder of Foxy and the Women's Climbing Festival. I'm also a global ambassador for Arc'teryx, and I'm on the board of the Access Fund. I live in New York City, but I am not in New York City right now. I'm in Chalfont, which is just 12 miles outside of Bishop. And I've been here for 6 weeks, which is consecutively the longest I've been anywhere, probably in about 2 years as well.
Nice. Andrew, I'm just gonna nominate now. Okay,
Cool,
Andrew.
perfect. What's up, everybody? I'm Andrew Muse. I'm a creator and athlete based out of Park City, Utah. Grew up in Massachusetts. I just finished building this crazy expedition vehicle. It took about 2 years, and the plan was to be up in Alaska, but I managed to break my leg snowboarding about a week before heading to Alaska. So I would be up in Alaska right now, up in Thompson Pass, and currently just hanging out, healing, waiting out the storm, trying to figure out what our next plans are.
So you've been basically forced before this even happened to stay in one place.
Yeah, I've had about an additional 6 weeks of social isolation and rest. So I'm pretty eager to like get back after it here sooner than later.
Yeah. What about you, Scott?
Yeah. Hi, everybody. Scott Kranz. I am at my humble home in Seattle, in the Ballard neighborhood of Seattle. I'm a freelance outdoor photographer. I've been doing this for about 5 years. Spend most of my time when I'm out in the field in the mountains, in particular the Cascade Mountains. And although it's a privilege to have a home to be, to isolate in and be safe in, and although it's a privilege to go out in the mountains, I'm definitely missing them greatly. And but know that this is what we have to do at this time. So but yeah, excited to be part of this panel.
Yeah, thanks for jumping on, everyone. So what we've talked about a lot of different things today. All of them obviously is how people are being affected, how things are changing around us, how the world is responding. And one of the things that we wanted to talk specifically with this group about is looking at the intentions for the year. We know kind of all your separate projects and your ongoing things that you're doing from our conversations, but also from just following along. And, now that's been completely reset. And so how are you guys managing that resetting of intentions for the year and your goals for the year? So maybe I'll start with you, Andrew, since you were already probably going down that mindset because you broke your leg.
It's been wild. I mean, breaking my leg, was hoping to try and get up to Alaska, but I know if I get up there, I'm going to try and push my limits and probably re-break it. I've rebroken bones in the past, just trying to get after it too. So kind of pivoting. Initially, the plan was to bring our rig all the way down to the southern point of South America over the course of a year or two. That also is up in the air. Just the world, the economy, what's going to be next. You know, it's already kind of an interesting journey to drive through that part of the world. And so we're not really sure. We're just trying to optimize what we have going on, continue to be as productive, continue lots of learning, like just trying to elevate our whole brand as a whole. And I'm not really sure what our next steps are, next plans are. I mean, with not knowing when this is going to let up, right now we're just kind of focusing on some like micro trips at home. Like I've been adventuring through our neighborhood. I found this little pond I never knew existed, and the crickets were going off the other night when I was shooting the moon. So this morning I woke up before sunrise, brought out a bunch of camera gear, and started working on like recording audio stuff. So stuff I've just never done before. So I'm leaning into some new skill sets and just trying to learn at the moment.
Nice. I love that. I feel like this time is, again, Scott, to your point, I mean, it's nothing is good about this, but there are these kind of pockets of opportunities to really lean into stuff that you probably were always like, yeah, I want to learn how to do that, or I want to like go into that a little bit more. And now you're actually able to, because you can't leave your house.
Time is an
Yeah.
interesting thing we certainly have more of.
Yeah. You know, it's been ups and downs. Like I'm a pretty motivated, positive, forward-thinking person, even in hardship, but definitely it's affected me where I'm like, man, I'm just fucking bummed. I want to get after it. And today, this morning, I was like, all right, I'm going to just start like leaning into things close by, like shooting photos of birds and stuff. I don't know, just learning and growing.
Shelma, what have you been doing to pass the time there, stuck in a trailer?
Well, my trailer is kind of awesome. So, I mean, a little bit of a backstory. So I was here already in like Bishop, Paiahunadu, which is like the Paiute word for this area, the land of flowing rivers. And we had to cancel our women's climbing festival 10 days before it started happening. So 350 people event, 6 months of planning down the drain. So, yeah, I've been like actually pretty busy. I've been working a ton. We're really trying to see how we can move some of the festival stuff onto social media, as well as just some other, you know, also trying to keep our business alive. But I've also been making a ton of masks out of cloth. Kind of a weird backstory. I live on this 28-acre ranch that used to have, like, a really old woman used to live here who was really into making like dolls with porcelain heads. Like that was her like hobby. And so we have these boxes of like porcelain doll heads and all this dress fabric and elastic for the dresses. So I've like co-opted the fabric and the elastic. I've been making masks for like people who work here in this area, for my friends in New York, kind of whoever needs them, whoever's been reaching out, for the Tuabe Indian Health Center here. I'm also really bad at sewing, so I'm very slow at making the masks. So it's been a little bit of an arduous task. But I'm super lucky. We live adjacent to BLM land, and we're kind of way out here. So I've turned into a very reluctant runner. I hate running, but I can pretty much just jump out of the trailer and go out into the hills, and I don't even see anybody. So yeah, I think this, you know, I thought nothing could ever make me a runner, but this pandemic, it might do it. It's hard to say yet.
Well, wait, we have a question from the audience about the dolls. What did you do with all the doll heads?
The doll heads are like sitting, well, most of them are sitting in boxes in this like double wide trailer that has kind of a mismatch of lots of random stuff. Like they just left, like there was like maple syrup in the drawer, like cupboards. There's like bath products in the bathroom. There was like photo albums. But one of my ranch mates has started to strategically put the doll heads in weird places. So like when you're walking around, you'll like surprise see one. So I've been like a little bit more aware of it now, but at first it was a little bit jarring.
Definitely not terrifying.
Yeah, instead of hiding Easter eggs, you hide doll heads.
Totally not creepy. It's totally not haunted here, guys. Come visit. It's great.
Well, not right now, but like eventually, yeah.
Yeah.
Cody, I saw you nodding your head a little bit when Shelma was talking about being forced into becoming a runner.
I hate running. I'm with you, Shelma. I tried, was it 2 years ago? I was like, as I was starting to train for this project, I was like, okay, I'm gonna start running and running up mountains. And I did it for like maybe a month, and I just gave up. I was like, this is not my thing. I'm gonna figure out a better way to to train. So yeah, not a runner. I don't think I ever will be.
What have you been doing anything to keep the training up, or like what's going on with the your world right now? Of course, you're pursuing the 50 project, and I know that you're still in the middle of it, but needing to maybe pause for the season. What's happening?
Yeah. So it was like pretty much middle of March. I came home after we just got our 27th line done of the 50 project, and was came home to Tahoe to do a little bit of a reset and just kind of get all my like gear and expedition gear ready for the end of the season, ready for all the big lines, because we were about to come into the prime time ski mountaineering season, being late March, April, into May and June, and had a lot of pretty big plans. So there was even lines that haven't been filled in for 5-6 years that were showing reports of being filled in. So I was kind of just gearing up mentally and physically for a huge end of the season, and then was literally had my truck packed ready to go the day we got the shelter in place order. So I just sat down and stopped. And at the first part, because I think there was such mixed information and kind of what was really going on. It was definitely a hard decision, but then it was quickly, like a very quick realization that I was like, no, you can't continue doing this while what's going on is going on. And it became pretty obvious that it's like, you got to pause. Of course, it's a bummer. This is kind of the thing I dedicated my life to in the last few years, but in all reality, mountains aren't going anywhere. It's going to be there next year, and I'll just hit pause and do what I can in the meantime. Lately I've been working out at home, being in the content game. It's been able to connect with kind of the fans a little bit more in depth. I'm creating kind of just bonus episodes in my garage and whatnot. A lot of the project, you get a lot of questions of like, how are you doing this? How are you doing that? So just shooting stuff in my garage, whether it's gear stuff or how-to stuff, has got to be a way I've been able to continue moving forward with just putting out entertainment out there. I've also realized, just even personally, there's so much news, and we've become so absorbed by what's going on. I mean, I'm constantly refreshing New York Times every 5 minutes, and then to like listen to something or watch something that just takes you out of it for an hour is just kind of a really nice mental break from it while we're all stuck inside. So I'm going to continue to try and make some distracting entertainment while stuck at home. Training at home, just kind of thinking about next season, thinking about how to keep it rolling. Again, it's a bummer that the prime season is done, but it's pretty small potatoes in the scheme of things, and it just kind of makes me reflect on how lucky I pretty much am to call skiing a job. And if I'm not getting to ski for a living, you're like, it's a pretty small problem considering what's going on.
Well, so just taking it a step back, so we kind of like dove into your project, and I think most people know what it is, but can you just give like a couple lines about what the 50 project is so that people know?
Yeah. So it's this, there's this book called The 50 Classic Ski Descents of North America. It came out in 2010. It was modeled off the original climbing book, The 50 Classic Climbs of North America. And it's like a coffee table book. It's just a beautiful like tribute to the mountains. It's just like beautiful lines and lines that kind of every level of backcountry skier might aspire to. So it's got like kind of almost, if you're just getting into backcountry skiing, you might dream in the next 3 years to 5 years of working your way up to climb and ski Mount Shasta, so something that's like an aspirational goal for like the entry level backcountry skier. But then it also has some of the most challenging lines in the world in there that have only been skied maybe once or twice. So some of the most hardcore ski mountaineers in the world that dream about those couple of lines. So it's got a wide variety of lines in there. And I started reading through that book 5 years ago, and it just started kind of like, I realized how many of these lines were on my bucket list. And I was like, man, I really got to do that one day. And I kind of realized it was like, well, if you really want to do that, you're going to have to commit everything to it. And then it started popping up in my head. I was like, well, I might just try all 50. And then all of a sudden that came to be, and I kind of worked through it in my head for a couple of years and worked through the plans and kind of worked through the mental battles that I could go through, the dangers, and all the things that you kind of go through when you're committing to a huge project, especially a project that is most likely not going to be completed. There is a small chance that all 50 will get done. So how are you going to be able to cope with that and make good decisions during this process and not be influenced into dangerous things by wanting to complete a checklist? So 2019, I set off to do this goal. Now we're 27 in, and 27 in for the time being.
and that's where it'll be.
It's a really good lesson to think about, like the fact that you're saying right now that you're dedicating everything to this, but you know that you might not finish it, right? And that's kind of, it's just the reality of what it is. And that's a interesting lesson to apply to, everybody right now, thinking about like, what are the projects that I cared about, and worked towards and planned for, and maybe they're not going to happen. And that's like, we got to just cope with that and move on and learn from it. Scott, how's this playing out in your world, man?
Yeah, it's, like everyone else, trying some new things, trying some old things. Although I definitely did not consider myself somebody who like rode bikes or even kayaking. Those are two activities I've been trying up just because can be easily done in Seattle. I can, stick with the social distancing, and they're good alternatives right now since I'm not driving into the mountains. And then picking up some old stuff too. Before I moved to Seattle in 2013, which kind of kicked off what I currently do in terms of photography, I was an attorney and very much on the side, a part of a band, a cover band. And so, but since I discovered the mountains in Washington State, the guitar has taken the back burner, like, the backest of burners. And so I finally picked that up since, I'm spending way more time at home. And so it's been fun to dust off the sixth string and get that going once again. Creatively, just doing what I can. It's although it's interesting times for everybody. There's no question that freelance creative work is not an exception to that rule. But been doing what I can. Been working on the projects that are sticking around. I just launched a print sale that benefited No Kid Hungry, which is a nonprofit kind of combating child hunger relating to the school closures. And also just sold off the last of my inventory of my 50 Peaks book, which goes towards the Washington's National Park Fund, that kind of basically fundraises for the 3 national parks in Washington. So just doing what I can, recognizing what I can control, and accepting the things I can't. It's in many ways, I'm also taking this time to read more, pause, meditate, because I know when this passes, it's going to be go, go, go again. And, just want to make sure I can take that opportunity to pause and reflect. So
it's nice in a way to not be go, go, go right now. So I think everybody here, or if not all, have said like, this is the first time you've spent like a month in the same place in like over 2 years, right? Something like that. That's been the same for me. And I gotta say, like, having been somebody who used to make sure that I had another trip on the books before I got back from whatever I was on, because I could like perpetually felt like restless everything syndrome. And like, I would have like anxiety that there wasn't another trip on the horizon to plan. It's like actually been really refreshing to just be like, no, I'm just like here for a while and working on some different stuff. Have you felt the same thing?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think, this situation is impacting people in so different ways. For those of us are lucky enough and privileged enough to be at home and really just be dealing with, downtime and boredom, I think you got to see it for what it is. And I think it's an opportunity for all of us to do what we can. So
what's been for anyone can jump in. What's been the biggest like surprising realization about spending an extended period of time in one place?
I don't like
that it's possible to do it without freaking out.
Well, we got two different answers here. And Andrew's saying it's possible to not freak out. Cody says I don't like it. Andrew, what are you saying?
I like what Scott was saying. For me, I used to play guitar back in high school and when I first moved to Utah, but it's taken a serious back burner. Just as far as the mountains and sort of the video and photo stuff. But it's been fun to re-exercise that part of my like intelligence, right? Like I feel like that part of me has just been sitting on a couch, not doing anything, like starting to exercise that muscle again and expand and meditate. And I also got into road biking, which I never thought I would do. With my broken leg, I can't run yet. I kind of like running, but yeah, the road biking thing's been fun. So it's been cool to settle in to it. Like I said, I've been practicing this for an additional 6 weeks up until we all got locked down. So it's been a struggle. I think boredom is like the biggest depressant for me. Like if I'm bored, I get super bummed out, but I've just been trying to focus on learning and things that just bring me happiness, right? Like playing guitar is one of those things, but it doesn't perpetuate what I'm doing in any real way. So I haven't really done too many of those things in the last couple of years because I've been so hyper focused on building this career, these things that have been working, these things that have been allowing me to live this dream life. But there's a handful of things I let slip through the cracks because they're not directly beneficial to my career. So that's been nice for me.
Good to hear. And Cody, you're not a fan of being at home too long.
Well, I realized it's actually just less of a being able to just go outside. And I kind of realized in my life that I'm most happy if at least once a day you're doing some sort of outdoor activity, whether that's mountain biking, climbing, hiking, just anything. And, just to be like kind of stuck inside, that's where it's really tough. The travel thing is, it's obviously fun to go explore and to go to places you don't normally know or whatnot, but just even being able to kind of explore the backyard is a lot tougher to deal with, I think, more than the distance that you're measuring, just the distance of getting outside.
Yeah. Well, we've got a question here from Janetta Seeger. Says question for everyone, but I'm going to direct to Shelma first. Who is your biggest inspirational figure?
That's a really good question. Can I pass? I wouldn't say that there's like one specific inspirational figure. I think I'm like constantly just inspired by like the women's climbing community. The most special part about the festival, which was the most sad about canceling, is that there's kind of this like giddiness of us all being together, hanging out and sharing and learning and being open. And, the festival, it doesn't really matter what I create or all the programming that we make if like women didn't come kind of, open and ready to listen and learn and like share about themselves, it just wouldn't create the space that we wanted. And so I've always been really inspired by that. I think also just I've had like 2 or 3 really important like older female mentors in my life that have like significantly shaped the direction that I'm in now. Like 10 years ago, I was a certified public accountant, and now I'm like sitting in a trailer in Chalfont. Like those are 2 really different things. Or I guess it was 15 years ago. So I think like just like the people in my life who are true to themselves, I feel really inspired by that.
I love that. It's not a specific figure. It's a value in a community, right? That's cool. Well, off of that, the back of that, I'm curious, what is your perspective, any of you, on the balance of like mentorship versus self-starter, right? Like how important is it to have a mentor or a guide or you know, or just be naturally like curious and kind of figure it out and go for it and take those risks yourself?
I'll say I definitely believe in a balance between the two. I think you need to have an approach where you're in part self-starting and kind of you know, stumbling or failing in the good way, where you learn like the best lessons from it and discovering things out on your own, but also having someone that you can look to kind of expedite stuff, you know, or just kind of direction to, and making sure, you know, you have the right goal in mind and you're heading in the right direction. I know, you know, the whether it's the outdoors or creative work, you know, the mentorships have always kind of popped up organically and informally, you know, never like a formal program or anything like that. But it's definitely those mentor relationships have been just key, I believe, to you know, to me getting where I got today. Although I'm always on the journey and always progressing, but I also contribute it to just like figuring stuff out on my own, whether it's, you know, learning about getting into the outdoors, you know, initially on my own, or learning the guitar on my own, or something like that. So I think it's a balance, I would say.
Yes.
Scott, yeah,
Everyone's just like,
yeah,
yes,
that's good.
right.
You got it.
You did it, so we're good.
Scott, real quick, while we're on you, we've got two other questions here. It says, what did Scott, Grant says, what did Scott cover in the cover band? Or who did Scott cover?
Jeez. It was an eclectic mix of music, and I swear it's hard to pinpoint. I mean, I would say if there was a most common genre that we covered, it'd be like 90s alternative. I mean, yeah.
Third Eye Blind.
I'm a millennial. Yeah. We had like some Goo Goo Dolls and some other stuff. But then we had like an Eagles song and like a Pink song and a CeeLo song. Very eclectic. But that feels like ages ago. So that's why it's been pretty nostalgic to pick up the guitar. But it's been super fun to exercise that side of my brain. So
that's great. And real quick, what is the mountain photograph behind you?
Yeah, this is the French Alps. You'd think I'd have like the North Cascades behind me, but no, I have the French Alps taken from Chamonix. So
awesome. All right, let's go with Alex Ropka asks Cody, can you describe some of the crux lines in your project? Maybe like one or two that are like the epitome of what's on your mind.
Yeah, there's pretty much in my mind, there's three, although no matter what in the mountains, pretty much every single line can be a crux depending on the conditions. If you're on a 40-degree, 1,000-foot face that's like completely icy, that can be far more dangerous than 55 degrees with super exposure and perfect conditions. But so you have to treat them all kind of as if they're cruxes. But for me, the three big ones that can have a tendency to keep me up at night, have a tendency to just swallow most of my brain power, is University Peak in Alaska, the mirror face on Mount St. Elias, and the north face of Mount Robson. So those three lines, I think University's been skied twice in about 20 years. The north face of Robson's been skied twice in about 25 years. And then the mirror face has only been skied once. So they all have their own difficulties. I've kind of thought of them in different ways. Universities to me is a physical crux. It's 8,000-foot, 45-degree sustained all the way up to 55 at the top face. It's just like one of the most sustained skiable faces on the planet. And there's no respite, no break from it. There's nowhere to hide. You've got overhead exposure pretty much the whole time. It's a 13-hour straight up boot pack up a giant wall. So I think physically you got to be in absolute perfect form. And then Mount St. Elias to me is kind of like the mental challenge. Everyone I've talked to that has been on the mountain has talked about, you know, week-long storms, the worst weather you could ever imagine. And you're probably going to get your tents destroyed. They're going to get broken flung off the mountain. You're going to dig a snow cave and you're going to be living out of that for the next 2 weeks, and try not to go absolutely crazy. And then once it does break, instead of going home and calling for a plane to pick you up, you go up. So I think that's where the mental challenge is going to be. And then Robson's just kind of the patience challenge. To me, it's the most straightforward. It's the most skiable line, and it doesn't have as many challenges other than waiting for the perfect conditions. And those perfect conditions could happen next month, or they could happen in 10 years, and you have to be there on the right time. It has windows of pretty much 24 to 48 hours where it's gets just enough like wet plastered snow that this 3,000-foot ice wall just gets covered in 3 inches of sticky snow, and you're able to ski it. And then 2 days later, you're not. So you just kind of got to be there and wait it out and be up on the mountain, scoping it over and over and over, and making the call. You might try it 10 times and it might not happen. So those are the three main ones that I'm kind of always thinking about.
Someone said in the chat, it sounds like you're getting the ideal mental training right now. So you should be good.
Yeah,
right? I was just thinking about that we like touched on it at the end of last conversation, but like how the outdoor industry, how we like as adventurers are so primed to, know how it feels to just have to sit and wait it out, right? Like to be like in a tent in a storm when you thought you were gonna like go hike that ridge line or climb that peak or ski that that slope or whatever it is. We're in a good position to have already experienced oftentimes like plans that just don't work out, or times that you just like can't do what you wanted to do and have to kind of sit still for a little while.
Yeah, I think it's mountain people should be pretty conditioned with patience, because if you don't have patience in the mountains, you're probably doing something wrong. So yeah, I've been actually pretty mellow here. It's not been freaking me out, but it's just a bummer.
Annie wants to know with any change in priorities during this time of reflection, like realignment with brands or new skills, specialties to differentiate during like hard times, inspiration for new projects, kind of like how you're realigning what the things that you're working on.
I would say I'm not realigning what I'm working on. I've been trying to realign my life a little bit. Like my main goals during this time have been to like sleep as much as I can, stretch every day, and like eat real food. I feel like, traveling all the time, like it's hard to get into rhythms, and I was working too much. I'm trying not to work. Like I'm trying to set really clear boundaries about work, not checking my email on the weekends, like not setting, exception for you guys, because you're real special. I haven't really been doing work on the weekends. Really like taking this time, like, hey, like the way I was living my life felt a little unsustainable, and like a little bit like I was working too much. And like, this is a really great opportunity for me to kind of reset what my priorities in my life are, valuing my like wellness and like my personal time with people that are important to me, in hopes that when things start to get busy again, I can kind of try to maintain a little bit of that. That's kind of been my goal.
Andrew?
What about you? Yeah, I was just gonna go to Andrew too, Jonathan. That's crazy.
Yeah, I think it's pretty similar actually. Just trying to realign with what my true like passions are and my true purposes, and where I want to put my effort moving forward. I've been spread pretty thin, trying to kind of do a little bit of everything to make what I do work. And certain parts I love, certain parts of it just feel like work and feel like a grind. And thankfully we're all fortunate enough to have these dream jobs and be in these amazing locations and live these ideal lives. But I kind of want to, when I set it off on this journey, it was just to be able to do the things that I loved. And now that started to grow some legs and be more and more successful, I feel like I've maybe disconnected with the like foundation of what I was doing. And now I've been chasing projects and chasing money and doing things to like just continue to grow. But, back, 8 years ago when I was living in someone's garage in Park City, waiting tables a few nights a week, skiing every day. Like that was kind of sweet. And now I'm like working 80 hours plus a week. It feels like, you know, behind the computer editing and doing all this stuff. I'm like, okay, like what's the real purpose of why I'm here and what I want to do and why I've built this thing? Like, I want to spend some more time leaning into like just more creative things. I don't think I really want to spend, you know, I picked up an editing gig while I've been hurt, and man, I just hate editing. I'm not taking on, after this project, I've decided I'm no longer doing any video editing projects that aren't personal or like directly in line with what I want to be doing. So just kind of realigning my North Star, as it were, and going to continue to work towards that and lean into the things that I'm passionate about, because I think that's what's got me here, not like chasing progress and status and stupid shit. So
it's really interesting. There's a lot of self-awareness there. And actually, Stephen was asking for top 3 tips in considering entering your field of endeavors, like how you kind of got started doing what you're doing. Really interesting that you even point out right now, like throwing it back to when you were in that garage and you were waiting tables and what it was about. And that's like, I would say one of the, if not the top thing to consider about getting into a field of doing what any of you do is like, what would you do if you weren't being paid to do it? And
right.
Finding the authenticity to like be your North Star.
That would be my,
love the emails part of my job. Just keep that.
You can have
that would be the advice. It's just lean into the things that you really love and you're really passionate about, because those are the things you're going to be willing to put forth the most effort, and that will grow its own. You know, if you're passionate about it, you're going to be good at it, and it'll be successful inevitably.
Yeah, for sure. Cody, we got one saying, how much weight are you carrying on your back up these mountains? Real tactical questions.
Yeah, well, for training this year, before the season, I went on a very specific training program that was kind of aligned with the Steve House methods, with heart rate training and stuff like that. But I was carrying 55 to 60 pounds of water weight in a backpack and hiking like 1,000 meters every other day. And that actually was amazing training. I came into the season as strong as I've ever been. But in the middle of the season, you know, your kind of average weight is around 20, which is just for your normal gear. And then as soon as you start adding ropes and axes and rock protection, ice protection, all that, like you can get up to 50 pounds pretty quickly. So training with a lot more weight has helped for when you go out there. It's kind of like putting a donut on the baseball bat, you know, those guys swinging around, all of a sudden the baseball bat feels really light. It's the same for packs.
And how did your experience on Mount Washington differ from some of the bigger names and taller peaks you've been on? Good old Tuckerman's Ravine right in my back.
I loved that episode.
That was a good episode, man. It looked like pristine conditions.
Yeah, no, it was awesome. You know, like so much of this project, what I like about it is it's not just the most challenging mountains in the world. It's not the 50 gnarliest lines in the world. You know, it's classic. It's the most classic lines in North America. So having something like Mount Washington, Tuckerman's Ravine, and Huntington Ravine was actually like one of the things I'd always wanted to do. It was on my bucket list before I really committed to this project, because you're just like, well, there's such a scene there. It just seems it's the birthplace of backcountry skiing in North America. It's like kind of some of the oldest history of skiing started right there in Tuckerman's Ravine. So just going to go and see that and be a part of it and see the scene and, you know, hang with the locals and just kind of understand East Coast skiing, because we as West Coast skiers can look down on it quite often, and not necessarily look down on it, but you just almost disregard it because there's not much reason to leave the West Coast to go there. It'd be like if you're a climber, you're going, you know, leaving Yosemite for something else. And so to be able to finally experience it and understand why it was so special was really cool. I would definitely go back. There was actually quite a few lines I was wanting to ski. We almost stayed for a few days because the weather was not working out for us on the West Coast, and we just saw some lines. We're like, let's just go free ski for a few days. But ended up there was a really good weather window in Washington. Came back and did Mount Shuckson right after that. So, which I'm sure you're familiar with, Scott, taking a lot of
That's
photos.
right. And that was the episode I watched last, and definitely, I think, wasn't it called like Pucker Factor 5000 or something like
Pucker Factor 100. That was
Pucker.
Stan Ray said that, and I was like, that's a good title for the episode.
Fitting. Yeah. No, I enjoyed that episode, and the project as a whole has been amazing.
Thank you.
So this is like the most questions we've gotten all day in the Q&A. So that's awesome.
Andrew,
so
real quick, have you skied Tux?
Have I skied Tux? Yeah.
Yeah. So I know you're from the area.
Yeah, it was like one of the last lines I skied before I moved west.
There you go.
Turns off. Yeah. Okay, we have a question, and this is probably for Shelma and for Scott, because you both left like very different jobs than what you're in now, right? So during your transition from CPA for you, Shelma, and then for Scott for a lawyer, a lawyer, I guess, into the life you're living now, did you see it as a gradual progression, or can you pinpoint any key moments or leaps of faith? That was really hard for me to get out. That question really struggled there.
I think it's definitely been some pretty big transitions more than gradual. So like what had happened is I had studied accounting and business economics in college, but then when I graduated, I moved to the Eastern Sierra for a few years and kind of like fell in love with being out here. Then went back to work for this really big public accounting firm called Deloitte & Touche. And I worked in corporate taxes for like 3 years in LA and in San Francisco. Kind of didn't want to do that anymore because it was taking up a lot of my time. And was really into the way that cities are designed change the way that you interact with the spaces that you're in. And so I applied to grad school, and I went and got my master's in urban planning at UCLA, focused on community-based development work. So that was like a huge career shift for me. When I graduated, I moved to New York City, and then I worked at a community-based design nonprofit there, doing like community organizing work with community-based organizations, super fun, like using art and design to talk about really complex urban planning concepts. And yeah, and then kind of at that time started the Instagram for Flash Foxy, just to post pictures of me and my girlfriends rock climbing. It wasn't really supposed to be anything. It started getting really big. We had like all these followers and people asking if we knew of women's events, and there wasn't really anything happening. So I think with that, like the two big leaps were like deciding to put on the festival and thinking it was going to be like 40 or 50 people and realizing like 300 people wanted to come. And then quitting my job to like maybe 3 or 4 months before the first fest to see, to do it properly and see what we can really make out of it. And I like remember the conversation that we had for like my podcast interview. And I think, you know, I would say there are these big moments, but it's like all the experiences that I've had have given me the ability to like gather all these tools and these skills and these experiences that have like given me the ability to like do what I do now.
Awesome. Thanks, Shelma. And also just go back and listen to Shelma and Scott's episodes too. Who knows, you know?
There you go.
Scott, what about you?
Yeah, when I look at my actual work, I can only describe it as an abrupt change. Back in early 2015, there was one day when I was full-time, 100% attorney, you know, working, and the next day I was 0% attorney and 100% scared freelancer. So yeah, the actual work was definitely what, you know, it's been leap of faith. I think to kill the cliche or to use the proverbial leap of faith, behind the scenes was much more gradual in weeks and maybe year leading up to that day where I actually jumped. I was, you know, being the diligent, you know, very diligent attorney that I was, doing a ton of research, chatting with established photographers who you know, I knew in the region and in the Seattle area, and asking questions about, you know, what it was like to be a full-time photographer, what's the day-to-day like, what's the industry like, what's the job outlook like. And a ton went up to, you know, gradual progression was leading up to that point. And even after making the jump, I mean, you know, it took a while for me to, you know, you jump in and you learn to swim, and that learning to swim was, you know, investment in a ton of gear and, you know, refining, you know, always learning the craft more and more, and just, you know, basically learning how to wear the entrepreneur's hat. So although it was abrupt change, I can say the behind the scene progress and steps were very gradual. I think it's fair to say. So
I'm curious, like with all of you right now, like work and life has changed, right? That's just the commonality across anybody in the world right now. Life has changed. I'm curious, what is keeping you motivated right now to continue working on your projects, your passions? Like what is the real driver for you, and what are you excited to do? Like, you know, as soon as we get the world is open again sign.
Are we gonna get a sign like that?
I think so. I think that's how it works. Yeah, they flip the switch, the neon light goes back on.
No vacancy. Yeah.
No vacancy.
I'll say the first thing, I mean, when this is all over, I'm going to be heading into the Cascades. I mean, sorry, that was probably the obvious answer for me. But yeah, I'm going to go ski tour or climb something in the Cascades. I'm curious what the snow level's at right now. I'm definitely daydreaming of that. But in terms of what's my driver, just staying curious and creative with respect to, you know, photo projects and video projects. I want to give a shout out to my friend Erin Sullivan. She is a photographer, awesome human. She started a project where she's creating outdoor scenes inside her home, and she reached out recently and asked me to jump in and give it a try. And so I was just the other day, was literally like cutting paint swatches of various blue colors and creating a scene that I'm very familiar with. When you're standing on a peak in the Cascades, you see this, you know, this network or sea of peaks and layers with fading blue light. And I felt like I was in grade school creating like a crafts project, but when it was all said and done, it was like really fulfilling, and it was surprising to me. So yeah, just the driver is staying curious, staying excited, even given the constraints or restrictions we're working within. And I think that's important. It's been important for me to do that. I'm excited to continue doing that.
Yeah, I'll say I just, for me, I'm very challenge driven. So I like challenging myself to things. So whether right now that challenge literally is, hey, how can you stay motivated, stay fit, stay driven to, like, at the drop of a hat, hit the road and go climb a big peak while stuck at home. So to me, like, that little challenge mentally, like, I could just easily fall into just sitting on the couch and doing absolutely nothing. But for me, it's kind of like, all right, here's a challenge for you. You've never had to do this before. How can you stay in shape with this TRX and some kettlebells in your backyard for the next month? And how can you improve on the media portion of your project, get better editing? And so it's just kind of like constantly challenging myself to be better, learn more, read more books, stay fit, just kind of in a different capacity than I'm used to.
Yeah, so Andrew, Cody's going to take all the editing projects. He's trying to get better at it.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm with you, Andrew. I can't even edit my own stuff. God,
dude, it's brutal.
Editor, she's the best.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think like similar to Scott, I haven't climbed in 4 weeks. I think the minute they say it's okay to be climbing, I'd love to get out and climb something. Just switching gears, like bouldering season is probably going to be over. So it's trying to think about like what I want to do in the Alpine this summer and kind of switching into thinking about that. Work-wise, I have a really, really super awesome film project that I was working on. I directed my first film last year, and I'm working on a new project about like the similarities in connection to land for climbing and hunting. So I went on my first hunting trip this year with my friend Jesse Johnston, who is like a bow elk hunter and works for the Wyoming Wildlife Federation. And it's this project we've been working on to really get super deep into each other's worlds and think about how there are actually a lot of commonalities between these two groups that often feel like they're really at odds with each other. And we've obviously had to hit a huge pause button. Like 3 of the 5 film shoots are kind of like probably not going to happen when we thought they were going to. But taking the time to really flesh out more of that idea, flesh out what's really important, start to think about the script a little bit more, like all that stuff that usually kind of could use some time, but like gets rushed because we're just trying to get out and shoot because we have no money. Well, like we have no money still, but we have lots of time. So we're trying to think like, how can we take this time to really start to develop this story in a powerful way?
Love that. I mean, there's so much more time to just literally the actual availability of hours at a time to sit down and be creative, where you can actually get in a flow zone versus where you're probably like, okay, I have 45 minutes to like do this a bit of work before. And you can actually like have much more, I don't know, Jonathan, when we put this together, like that was a great time that we kind of came together and were able to just like let the juices flow that we haven't really had in a long time. Yeah,
it's certainly time to create. I mean, I know that I too share the editing PTSD, but I also like found myself plugging in an old drive from my trip to Denali 2 years ago and thinking like, oh, it might be time to dig through this footage now and do something with this. So it's an interesting opportunity. I think that's the point, is like looking at right now not as a crisis but as an opportunity. While at the same time having all the empathy in the world for anybody that is adversely affected right now.
Right.
Cody, do you know how to snowboard?
Do I? Yeah, for sure. It's actually, I grew up surfing, I grew up skating, as someone mentioned in the chat. I grew up in Santa Cruz, but somehow I became a skier. I actually, I believe I've figured out I'm the first person in history to rebel against their parents to become a skier. My dad was a snowboarder starting in 1986 when it was just like opened up to snowboarding in Squaw Valley, and it was still being banned in a lot of ski areas, and was like my dad was even sponsored because he was somebody over 40 years old that was snowboarding, and they thought it looked good for their image to have a father snowboarding. So he was a snowboarder. He tried to get me into snowboarding, and I was like, I don't know. All my friends at that time, it was like snowboarding was the cool thing. It was the rebellious thing. For me, it was like, my dad does it, I'm gonna become a skier. So, but I definitely still snowboard here and there.
The counterculture.
Yeah, totally. I was like full counter. But my friends in Santa Cruz made fun of me for sure. They did not understand why I could surf and skate, but then I skied. So, but Jeremy Jones just gave me a new split board. So hopefully give that a try here soon. I'm stoked on that.
Nice. Andrew, sorry, it looked like you were about to jump into something.
Oh, I was just gonna, my future plans and motivation.
Oh, okay. We don't have to go there. Thanks though.
Okay.
No, I'm just kidding. Come on, lay it on us.
Is to hit the road in this vehicle that we spent 2 years building and start season 3 of the Tiny Home Adventure, which has kind of been in the works for the last 3 years. So that's the plan.
That's amazing. So what's the timeline looking like on that?
As soon as this stuff, we're free to roam, we're staged and ready. It just need the green light.
Yeah. But the real important question, Andrew, is where is Kicker right now?
I meant to bring him in here. He's just hanging out with Ashley. We're parked at a friend's house. We've been here for the last couple weeks, healing and now hunkering down, social distancing ourselves. So he was outside chasing bunnies and smelling the breeze, but I don't know what he's doing right now.
Beautiful golden retriever Kicker. That's what I'm very interested.
I know. I was gonna like post them up right here, but I forgot. So
next time.
So I think we don't have time, unfortunately, to get to every single question that's been asked here. There's been a lot of engagement, which is incredible. But I see the last one is just caught my eye. It's pretty interesting. It's like, how do we as outdoor lovers safely and appropriately transition back into the outdoors when the neon light comes on? Regarding protecting people in the environment, like we as the community stewards that the like industry looks to, right? What's your take on how to lead by example there?
I mean, I think it's the idea that like there isn't going to be a neon light. Like, let's all try to use our brains a little bit. Like, all right, so like maybe people are climbing or skiing over here. Like, is that appropriate where I am? Like, every place is going to hit a peak at a different time. And like the way that we're going to be able to engage with the outdoors is going to be really custom to where you're at and where the situation is with the pandemic at that time. So I think I think, you know, don't think of it as like a yes, like a go, like a no go button. There's no button like that. Like, think about like, where are you? Who's at risk where you are? Where is the pandemic with what you're at right now? How risky is the endeavor that you're doing? Are hospitals still stressed right now? Are hospitals still places that you don't want to be? Like, I think these are all the questions you should be asking as you start to see maybe some other people going out there. I think also being really honest about your skill level, being really honest, like, what is my actual ability out there? And is there like a greater risk? Like, yes, this person went out, but am I actually at the same level as that person? Or maybe I should hold back a little bit right now because like, I don't want to get injured and like put a stress on the health system.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. What you just said, it's
Yep.
being honest with your skill level and still dialing it back. And I also think there's like everything that we don't see in enough society is just kind of like empathy and open communication and like honesty with each other. And like, there's going to be the moment, you know, like Scott or Shelma, you go out, there's going to be people like, I think that will like hate on that and be like angry at that. It's just part of it. And if you can have like empathy for what you're doing and explain and open, and then also to the other people that go out there and be non-judgmental, but just like converse openly and be honest about it. I think it's the only way we're going to kind of collectively get through it, because yeah, there's not going to be some neon light that pops on and says open, go time. It's going to be a tricky individual consideration. Like, you know, for me, like, I'm not going to go lead climbing in the next few months. I'm a very mediocre climber, but for me to do something like Mount Rainier and skiing, you're like, yeah, that's well within my capabilities and very low on the risk factor. So you just have to be open and honest with yourself.
Love it. Well, thank you guys so much for joining. I know we're like right at time. We really appreciate it, and you taking some time out of your Saturday. We know you're all incredibly busy today, so no, but we really do appreciate it. Oh no, Shelma. I know. Well, we do appreciate it, and appreciate you guys being part of the Stokecast community. Thanks so much.
Yeah, Andrew,
Thanks for having us.
Cody.
You too.
You're all amazing. Thank you.
Andrew,
Thank you,
Shelma,
guys.
Cody, good to connect with
See
you
you
guys.
guys.
And thanks
Yeah,
for
nice to
having
meet
us.
It was fun to
everybody.
talk with you.
Everyone.
Get
Yeah.
better, Andrew.
Bye.
See you guys.
Yeah.
Later.